When I was working on my mermaid challenges, I realized some of my Copic markers have died. So I made a note that what I need to do is I need to go through, test them all, because the bad habit that I've gotten into is that if I found out a marker was dead, I would just put it back in the sleeve and I wouldn't mark it or fill it up or do anything to identify that that marker needed to be refilled. So I have some refills, so what I decided to do today was to just go through all of my markers and just swatch them and see which ones are dead. So I have just some sketch paper. I'm probably going to do a few swatches or a few swipes just to make sure that I have the color. And I've always noticed with my Copics, if they're dry, so you'll kind of notice this one, jade green, like when I scroll down, it has, like on the edges, it's a thicker ink lay down than in the middle. So this one could stand to be refilled. So I'm actually gonna put that one to the side. So the way that I usually do it is I'll just put it and have it filter through the chisel tip, which again, we'll get to that. But this is a really good example. So if you'll notice on this first like swipe that I did, like the coverage isn't really that good. So basically what you're always looking for is you're looking for an even line regardless of how light it is. If you can see that, the tip of the marker looks paler because the ink in it isn't, it's doing a really good job of, let's see if I can do it this way. Come on. I haven't figured out the art of beauty vlogging. So let's try this. Oh, we're so close. Oh, we're so close. There we go. Okay. Wow, just watch me struggle on that. So you can kind of see the tip of the chisel is a little bit lighter than the surroundings. So that's how you can kind of tell, and once it goes out of focus, that's usually how I can tell if my marker is honestly going dry or if it's just like got an air bubble in it. It normally won't do that. So that's why when you go to do the colors, you're going to get that weird banding effect. So that is another one I get to fill. And I primarily like to use the chisel tip of my sketch marker to do the test because I feel that it just gives a better representation of the ink levels in the marker. There are tons of people who do Copic stuff, so I would recommend seeking their, multiple tutorials and finding the method that works best for you and that you're more comfortable with. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this color that was pretty dry and I'm going to show you doing a quick swatch with the brush. So if you'll notice, the brush isn't showing that it's really dry, but it is kind of fading with each strike down. So that's one reason why I prefer to use the chisel tip when I'm looking to figure out what markers will need a refill, because this color, up here, it definitely needs one, whereas earlier when I did it with just like the sketch nib, you didn't need that at all. I'm going to go get my inks and some of my other supplies and adjust my setup a little bit to kind of show you the next steps, what I usually do when refilling my Copic markers. And hopefully I have ink in one of these three colors. If not, I'll swatch some additional markers, get that ink, and we'll get that taken care of. Yay! So exciting. So I could say that I am still unpacking from a move 3 years ago, which, whatever, it happens. I could also say I'm a very organized person. One of those is a lie. So I wasn't able to find the needle that I wanted to. I'll see if I can find a photo of it and interslice it into here, but I can still show you what essentially it would be. So we're going to start with jade green. So here is the, oh man, the ink that you get for the Copic. It's got a spin top, and this is what the top looks like. So with the needle, if you were to use that method, you would screw it on to the cap and there'd just be this long needle, and then you would take your Copic and just like you could insert the needle in between those, like, let's see if I can, will it do it? So you can kind of see like a gap where the marker goes into, and it has that felt tip resting within the marker. So you would try and get it in there and you would be able to drain and fill the marker that way. They also sell tweezers that you can use to pull off the nib, which is super helpful. One of the methods that I used to do, and I'm just going to do this to show you guys. Now, it'll be nice for you to like actually use the tweezer, because after doing that multiple times, you end up getting like marker residue on your hands. So I would recommend, if you're doing a batch upload, I would do your lightest color to your darkest, and or get tweezers or, you know, other things such as rubber gloves or whatever. Wash your hands, all that fun stuff. But so what you should be seeing in the marker is there's going to be the reservoir where you can then fill the ink. Now sometimes, so you'll notice, and I'm not actually going to do a lot of filling, you'll notice that the ink distributor, the niblet goes into your marker. And what you can do is you can essentially fill it this way, but I've found that if I'm filling a marker and I've taken out the this bit, the nib, and I'm filling it this way, it doesn't get, like, it doesn't have air go through it, so you have a good chance of it backfilling and like getting all over the place, and then you waste some ink. So the method that I've actually done, or that I usually do, is I will just put and have the nib itself help me refill, and I'll try and have it so that the ink hits the top part of whatever part of the nib. Now I've done it this way just because having a wider surface is better. I do a nice controlled squeeze. I try and wait, I'll see if I can get a good shot of it the next time I release. So essentially when you're applying the constant pressure, what's going to happen is you're going to be squeezing in on the marker. And you'll notice, hopefully, I don't know if I can, I'm going to try and do this. So when you should have seen a bubble or two float up when I was done. I always try and count like 2 to 3 bubbles is kind of the rate that I'm looking at for filling the marker. Now, I haven't figured out the perfect method and the perfect amount to put in these markers. Because I have a refill of the markers, I tend to usually probably only fill them half full. And that's because I have the refill, so it doesn't matter when I need to refill it. It doesn't really bother me using this method to refill my Copic marker. It takes a while, but with the coverage that I can get after a refill, it's not too big of a deal. So, yeah. Sorry, I didn't remember to show the thing. So I usually try and do like 4 or 5 amounts of that. And what basically it's doing is that it should be sending the alcohol into the reservoir of the pin. At least in my head, that's what I think is happening, because I can't actually see what's going on. And obviously, I am putting enough ink onto the nib for it to get sucked in, and it's not dripping out the other side, which is good. So that's one of the things why I kind of like to do this controlled method as well, is that if I end up overfilling the marker, I can essentially prevent myself from wasting that much more. I'll see if we can get another good shot of like the bubbles coming up. So hopefully I got that. Anyway, so a bit of advice that I usually, or what I've started doing when I fill the markers, is after I filled it, I will turn it, so this is the chisel tip and that's the tip that I filled on. I'll turn it the other way and actually store it this way, and then I'll make sure to also store it this way so that the ink can kind of find its equilibrium. And the other thing that I always do with these markers is I always double check them after I've done a filling with them, and I do a shake test, because you can't really see how full or how not full the reservoir is. And the method that I've used, I've noticed a few times that I've either overfilled it or put too much ink in, and it's then the next time I've used it, it's done essentially what happened here, is that a giant, well, I shouldn't say a giant, but it becomes a giant like splob of color, just like drips out. And if you're working on a finished piece, or if you're, you know, wanting to finish a coloring thing and say that was someone's face, and you now just got a nice little green birthmark on their face. So after letting it sit a while, I would then go do another swatch test, and oh, look at that. That is so much nicer. Oh man, it also, a filled Copic marker feels like butter. That's so nice. This is why everyone loves these markers. And I mean, obviously they're good because you can refill them, and you can actually replace almost all of the parts for them. So I wanted to make sure that I shared this, because this is one of the things that I do have. This is just a replacement nib. So say something happens, like you end up cutting your nib, or it gets, you know, dyed with a color that you didn't want. You can get packs of replacement nibs, and if you prefer different types, so these are actually the medium round, so they're not the sketch nibs, but they are, well, I mean, they're sketch nibs, but they're not like this. So you can see the difference. I don't know where the rest of them went. They're probably with my needles that I have. But I made sure to get a few replacement nibs so that if I needed to replace anything, I could. Hey, what's up? I apparently found a marker that I jacked up, and so I can actually replace the nib on this. So I don't know if, can you see that glitter like on the nib? Oh, what was I doing? I am a child. So I apparently got something black and shiny on the tip of this marker. So now whenever I make a mark, it leaves black, like in the corner. Let's show you. Oh, look at that, look at that, look at that. That's bad. You don't want to be coloring your piece being all like, look at me, I'm making art. Oh, that's bad. So I really hope I have this. Okay, so I do have the color, so I'm actually going to show you doing a replacement of the nib, and this is why you use, oh man, look at me, I can't even, where is the camera? So this is why when you do that, you actually want to use like pliers, because you will get the ink all over you. Here we go, walking around, doing things on YouTube. So go ahead and, so that is done. I'm really tempted to just like fill one of the ones that I have and then do that so we can see what that looks like. But now, oh, look at that. Oh man, the color is even nicer too. So that ink was like jacking with my color. I am a terrible artist and I destroy my art stuff. So this is when I would just do a quick double check, and essentially what I'm doing is a very like vigorous like dotting motion, but I'm stopping myself, or like a stipple. We all we can use art terms here. So you do like a stipple or like a bird pecking. So just kind of like do a quick motion, and that should like jostle the ink around. And just because it didn't happen on one side doesn't mean it doesn't happen on the other. So I would also do it on the side that you filled from, but I would make sure to do that after kind of letting it sit. I'm gonna simulate overfilling it so you can see what happens when that goes down, if I can find my thing. So yeah. So essentially we're just gonna do this, and I'm not even gonna wait. So just like, oh, of course it's not gonna do it, and then I hit, oh, don't tell Copic. So boop, 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 boop. Oh man. So then if you overfill it and it like drips out the side because you did too much, you're gonna get the, like, you'll see here, I have the ink. Beep. Yum 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 yum. Yum 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 yum. Yum yum. Okay, I think that might be good. Okay, so you'll see, you'll notice like doing that, like, stuff flew out. Essentially that'll happen. I've had times where like I've done it, or I've like taken the cap off and gone down to use it, and just like a gigantic ink blob rolled off of the nib, and it was really sad. So I do definitely want to kind of like sit and let this one absorb, and I will be doing a shake test later on because I don't want to forget that I did that. And yeah. So the other interesting thing that I've found is like the marker always feels heavier to me after I fill it up, but I think that that's just like psychosomatic stuff. So anyway, I would like to thank you very much for watching this video today. I hope you have a wonderful day and go make something.